All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Live Ultralight Podcast, powered by Outdoor Vitals. Today we have a very unusual episode. We're going to be recording this in a car, 7 smelly dudes, and talking about our recent trip to the Grand Canyon. I didn't do much, personally. I walked down the South Rim, the South Kaibab Trail, and camped overnight and basically held our place at camp while these other guys went many, many more miles. We met up at camp, and then I also left before they did and had a nice slow hike up the Bright Angel Trail, and it was really nice. But what did you guys do? Brigham, what was the plan?
Plan was to...
What was this hike? What was it about?
Run down the South Kaibab Trail, run up the North Rim Trail, and then run back down to the Phantom Ranch Bright Angel campground area. Day 1 and day 2, it was basically just to hike out. So day 1, that route was supposed to be what? I don't know. We expected 35? Maybe about 35 miles. Day 2, we expect about 10 miles.
What did it end up being?
38.25.
38.25.
Yeah, 38.25 on day 1, and 10.7 on day 2.
Whose idea was this?
Wasn't it yours?
I don't know. I don't want to take credit for it now.
I was talking to Joe.
Oh.
It's definitely not my idea.
To do the podcast or the run? I think I remember us talking about testing out new product by going rim to rim in the Grand Canyon. And then somehow someone said, oh no, we should go rim to rim to rim.
Well, the point is, to test out a Fastpack, you might as well have, the point is to have your camping gear in there. So it's kind of silly to drive all the way down here, because you could really do the rim to rim in a day easily.
Easily?
But then you're not gonna camp.
On paper, easily.
For some people, it would be easy.
In theory.
In theory. As smooth as butter. But... yeah.
Jason, tell us about your experience. Give us the story.
So, started off great. Started off running down the South Kaibab Trail. It was beautiful. It was nice. We thought we were going at a decent pace, like not going too fast out of the gate. And got to the bottom. It was like 7 miles down. We're all feeling really good. Then we started to go up this really long wash. So the trail is like 8 miles of like going up this kind of wash canyon. And then you turn and go straight up to the North Rim, and that's like 6 miles up. So yeah, it was like 14 miles-ish from the campground area. But it started off being really, really narrow, really pretty, a lot more than I expected, like the whole run down. I've been nervous about like haze. There's been a ton of dust in the air. I wasn't sure what we'd be able to really see in the distance, but it was really pretty. Start hiking up to the North Rim, and the canyon's really tight, really, really nice. And yeah, things were going really well, I guess, at that point. I think a few people were feeling some discomfort from the run down, because I think when we got to the bottom, we started to realize how much running down that trail took out of us. So I don't know if anyone has anything they want to say about that. But
Well, when you say running down, what you're really saying is every 2.5 to 4 feet, there's a log across the trail, and then the sand and rocks create like potholes in front of the logs from the mules and all the people. And so rather than running down the South Kaibab, it's more like you're hopping from log to log and dodging rocks and jumping over rock drainage lines that go across the trail. So by the time we got down, I think all of our calves and our quads were quite pumped. And
you guys want to pass it first?
no, we're just passing through today. Thank you.
at the National Park booth.
Cool.
Yeah.
Says
Cool
the ranger
beans.
at the national park. All right.
So the South Kaibab Trail is amazing. You get an awesome view of the expanse of the South Rim. But that trail is the roughest trail that we were on. So we started off faster and harder than we thought we did, I think.
For me, I feel most comfortable running downhill. So I didn't think that first 8 miles or whatever it was were too bad for me. What really started killing my legs was when we started going up the North Rim Trail. And that was just about as steep, but the trail was rough. We were already tired at that point. We were almost 20 miles in, I think, or 15 to 20, somewhere in there, before we even started climbing. And then we had to climb up thousands of feet of elevation up to the North Rim. And by the time we got there, I was pretty beat. But the run in, coming down the South Kaibab Trail, I actually felt pretty okay. I did notice like a little bit of tightness in one of my calves, but I'm kind of the odd one out. Where
wildebeest.
I just feel more comfortable going down things than up things, where a lot of these guys they'll go right up stuff, and that's their preference. But yeah, I think running down that, like typically when you run down a trail, you can heel strike, meaning your foot is landing on its heel, and then you're kind of rolling forward with your step. But because that one was so technical, you had to kind of point your toes and land on your toe to navigate all the rocks and the logs and balance on this and that. And so I think that was the biggest thing, is a lot of us got down that and our calves were just burning already. And obviously it's going to beat your quads up going downhill, but I think the calf was really what surprised me, how much soreness and fatigue there was in those, because typically running downhill, you're just hill striking, and it's just mainly your quads taking the beating.
Passing a lot of elk right now.
Tell them what kind of training you did.
Training, me.
Whether or not it was enough.
Yeah. For me, I've been kind of ramping up my miles to where I'm running about 20 miles a week. In the last 3 or 4 weeks, I've been trying to hit quite a bit of elevation, somewhere in the 6,000 foot worth of elevation a week range. So I thought I was, because I've got other events and stuff, so I thought I was going to be in a good spot. And yeah, I apparently have things to learn still, but that was me.
Yeah, for my training, I tried to kind of peak my training a week and a half before we came down here so that I had time to rest. And at that point, I had been trail running / hiking like 30 to 35 miles a week and getting about 4,000 feet of elevation gain in a week. Because in the ultra marathon running world, they kind of tell you to run in 1 week the amount that you'll be doing in the race. And so that's kind of been our thought process behind our training. And what I think we were not as prepared for was just the steepness of going straight down the canyon, traversing from south to north up the Grand Canyon, and then going straight back up the cliffside. So it was super steep.
Well, I also think something that is hard to train for where we live, and keeping in mind we live in an awesome place where we can trail run like to our heart's content right out our back doors basically, but it's hard to find trails with all that log placement and the rock steps. Like I think that actually played a pretty big factor in my legs, at least for the running downhill, and because you can't get in any kind of a rhythm running downhill, and so all my running is all trail running, but couldn't really duplicate those trail conditions that the Grand Canyon has.
For my training, I was probably the least prepared of all these guys. I do a lot of treadmill running, and I was trying to up the outdoor running, but I didn't get the elevation gains that Tyler and Tayson were talking about. And so, yeah, definitely those log steps coming down, that's what beat me up the most. It's like about a foot drop off of each step. And so when you add thousands of feet of elevation and thousands of steps, it adds up. So for me, I was one of the guys that when I got to the bottom, I could feel it. And I was cramping up pretty bad on the way up to the next side. These guys kind of had to slow down just for me, but definitely worth it.
So when you say that you were cramping up, like how far, because obviously it's like 14 miles or whatever up to or 15 miles up to the south side, when did you start to cramp? When we were still on the lower, flatter stuff, or when we got to the end where we're like the last 6 miles of just climbing?
So my cramping started happening, we'd made it to Phantom Ranch and we got past that, and so it was probably 3 or 4 miles after, and I noticed it whenever I'd start running downhill again, that my calves and my thighs would start to just cramp up, and I've never had that before.
So about 15 miles in?
About 15 miles in, yeah. And so I literally just had to walk. I was pounding STM packs, just making sure that I was getting as many electrolytes in me as I could, just to, make sure I wasn't getting dehydrated. But I just think that I tore every muscle I had up on that way downhill, and trying just to push it further was just causing me to cramp up the rest of the way. And so I was able just to kind of find my pace where I could get past it, but it was definitely a slower pace than I would have wanted.
Derek?
So, some of the ways that I've been training is I do a good mix between running on pavement and then trail running. For me, like the reasoning behind that is I go for higher distances on pavement, which is easier for me to ramp that up more quickly in my training. When it's just on pavement, it's just easy to run on. But then I've been working a lot on elevation and stabilization, like in my ankles and knees when I'm doing trail running, which I still do most days on the trails. But that's a lot of what I've been doing. I think it definitely helped on this trip, but that day, I don't know if we've said this actually, but that first day was almost 40 miles, and I was just not ready for that. I think that pushed my limits quite a bit. Obviously, we all got it done, but I probably could have trained a little bit more for that, just going farther and maybe training with a little bit more elevation than I was.
Well, I'm going to ask for each of you guys, highest high, lowest low of the trip.
I feel like we got to take him through the rest of the trip.
Okay, well, Tayson's saying something, so here.
All right. This is fun doing this in the car. We did miss one person in the car. So Eric is a buddy of mine I grew up with since like the 4th grade. I invited him. We had another spot or two in our campsite, so I invited him to come and give it a shot. And I said, you got a month to train. Good luck. If you can't make it, it's sweet. You just turn around. But so what did you do for your training, Eric?
Well, mostly just running on the road for the most part. I mean, a lot of the routes that I was taking, had decent inclines to them, and tried to ramp up the distance. But
how many miles do you think you did in a week, or anything? Did you track anything like that?
I think I got between 15 and 20 miles a week. But yeah, just the immensity of this whole thing is just not enough. So
when we got to the bottom and we're leaving the campgrounds and stuff, how are you feeling at that point?
Oh, I felt great by the time we got to the bottom. So just the downhill, I guess, kind of allows you to keep up your momentum. And I mean, it was kind of difficult navigating everything, but it just ends up being, I guess, not as difficult, obviously, going downhill. So felt all right. Had some blisters on my feet in some weird spots, but
threw some tape on those, and they ended up being just fine the rest of the trip. Didn't even feel them really.
So did the Luco tape? So we put some Luco tape on basically the ball of your foot area, and did that hold up for the rest of the trip?
Yeah, it did. I think a couple of times I was just speeding up a little bit too much to either catch up to somebody after I was, taking in the view or something like that, and just enough friction to add into the ball of my foot there that it put blisters underneath the calluses that I already have there. So adding the tape in kind of just saved me for the rest of the trip.
So I feel like spirits were pretty high. We were heading up the canyon. The views I thought were better than I even expected. The whole thing I think exceeded my expectations for scenery and whatnot. But we started heading up, and we got to this upper campground, which I'm going to forget what it's called. Cottonwood Campground. Stopped for lunch, and at that point, I think more aches and pains and things had started to shake out. We were probably 6 miles up from the bottom. I'll call the bottom like where the river is. And so we stopped for lunch. It's about 11 o'clock Arizona time. Keep in mind, we started at 6 o'clock here. And so we stopped for lunch at 11 and started to kind of make a game plan to maybe start upping the pace a little bit to increase some of that pacing. So, at that point, I think it was interesting. Darren had been kind of cramping already, so I kind of asked you, Darren, if like are you gonna do this, man? Are you gonna be able to make it? Cramping's tough because you can't just will yourself to stop cramping, right? But Darren gave us the hard commitment, and Eric was feeling like he didn't want to slow us down, so he was going to hang out there and maybe keep going and then back to camp. And so we kind of split up with Eric from there and then started to head farther up. So about another 2 miles up, we got to basically our last water point, cameled up right there, and then it was supposed to be 5 miles up to the rim. And I think this is where the trip got really exciting, because at this point we would have been 17 miles into the day, and we started to climb up and out of the North Rim. So, how's everyone feeling on that climb out, and how would you guys describe it?
One thing we haven't mentioned is the wind. So all day long we had constant 30-mile-per-hour winds with gusts, probably 40, 50 miles per hour. Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah.
It's so when we start walking up these trails, keep in mind that one side you have a ledge that's hundreds of feet drops off, and the other side is a wall. So a big gust of wind, if you're not using your trekking poles right, you could get blown right off. It was pretty sketchy, but that was exciting for me.
I think we kind of forgot about the wind after we got down to the bottom at Phantom Ranch, because that's a really tight little, really low canyon. But then as we came up out of the really tight canyon and we got to that Manzanita area that Tayson was saying is where the climb up the North Rim starts, then all of a sudden we're just blasted with wind as the canyon opens and we start to gain elevation. And you'll see in our video footage, everyone was getting blown around up there, and the trekking poles were worth their weight in gold. Plus we were a little, we were kind of tired by then. We were pushing 20 miles and fighting the wind and in the cliffiest, most extreme looking part of the trail. So
yeah, we're climbing up out of there, and it just gets steeper. And then when we start passing all these ledges, some of them, the trail gets narrower and narrower, and it's uneven. That wind is blowing, and it was crazy. I felt definitely a few times I just about got blown off, but we keep climbing up, and eventually it starts turning into more of not right on a cliff edge. The trail starts being more windy up, just steeper hills and steeper inclines, and it was crazy because we thought we were getting close to the top, because you can see, if you look up, what you think is the top of the hill, but the higher you get, the top of the hill actually gets higher and higher too, as more as more opens up to your vision. And so this climb just kept going and going and going, and we were just all wondering when are we actually going to get to the top. At one point we thought we were pretty close, and then Tayson, he actually pulled out his maps and was looking at it, and he didn't have the heart to tell us that we still had over 2,000 feet of we had 2,200 feet of elevation to climb still, and he just didn't want to tell us. I think we didn't want to be demoralized, but it took almost everything we had to get to the top, and we didn't finish that trail very strong. It was kind of get to the top and everybody kind of collapse and take a break before we started heading back down. I think the worst thing for me, though, as far as getting to the top, was realizing, well, we made it to the top, and that's a pretty good accomplishment. You feel pretty good about yourself, but then you remember, oh, well, we've got to still hike another 15, 16 miles back down to camp, and that just took the wind right out of my sails. I'm like, okay, this accomplishment is no longer as cool because there's just this other thing looming now. But
it was 23 miles from the south rim to the north rim, and so we had a lot of miles under our belt by the time we got clear up to the top there. But yeah, like Derek said, we knew we had a lot more time on trail left that day.
It was 23 miles plus factor in thousands of feet of elevation climbing.
Yeah, something like 8,000.
Tayson's saying something like 8,000 feet of elevation climbing. So, I mean, we were pretty tired at that point, and then still a long ways to go. So we start heading back down, and Darren gets a head start because his legs were still cramping and feeling uncomfortable, so he leaves while some of the rest of us are still packing up stuff and getting ready to go. And eventually we all kind of get split up. I left and eventually caught up to Darren. It took me a number of miles to do so, but I caught up to him, and we hiked a lot of the way out. But these other guys, I think, also ended up splitting up for other reasons as well.
Yeah, that was definitely where the trip turned for me. It was like night and day. Someone just switched out the lights, it felt like, for me, because on the way up, I was feeling good, tired like everyone else, but just feeling good. We sat down for like kind of 30 minutes and had some food and drank a little bit, and then when we got up to leave, I went to step off the very first step, and I think I even had the GoPro running, and I just felt like excruciating pain. And I just knew, like, okay, something's not feeling good with my knees. And that basically turned into the rest of the downhill for me, where me and Brigham had already had knee pain on the way up. And I'll let him talk about that. But at that point's when my knee pain kicked on, and it just felt like I had needles jabbing into my knee. And so the next 5 miles, me and Brigham basically just crawled down the trail, and Tyler stayed back with us. But me and Brigham were just limping. I mean, it'd be quite comical to see what it would look like, us just down each stair.
I got video of it.
Yeah, there's going to be some video, I'm sure, of us. But it was quite weird, because basically what I kind of self-diagnosed with is that my quad and my IT bands were just locking up, and they were so tight and so sore and tense that it was just tweaking my knee enough to cause these really sharp pains in my knee. So, that climb down was probably the hardest, like, just single 5-6 miles of trail that I've ever done, just from a pain tolerance perspective. But fortunately for me, once we got to the bottom, when it wasn't such a stark, downward trail, I was able to kind of pick up the pace again. But Brigham, how are you feeling on the downhill and with your knee situation?
I was feeling pretty miserable, and Tyler was very gracious to stay back and hike out those long, and very, very long 14 miles with with me because I was moving like at a snail's pace, and it was. I think I told Tyler it was like the worst pain I've had since I had a kidney stone a few years ago, and it was pretty bad. So I don't know what the deal is with the knee, but it's I had to go to a place I haven't been to in a long time to actually get back to camp last night. So
Yeah, so at that point in time, it's 7 o'clock, and I realize that I have Eric's tent, and we're quite a bit slower down the trail than we thought. And I'm like, man, Eric's going to be sitting at camp all day or something, doesn't even have a tent to sleep in tonight. So I'm like, I'm feeling like I need to kind of up my pace, get back to camp, and, let him have a place to sleep. But so I actually started jogging down the trail, and thought I'd been told that Darren was running, which I found out was not true later. So I thought Derek and Darren were like basically to camp by the time I was there, but I ended up catching them about 3 or 4 miles down the trail, and just said, I feel like I got to keep pushing here, get this stuff back to camp and whatnot. And so at that point, Derek joined me, and Darren kept his pace. He was clicking along miles pretty quickly, and so me and Derek kind of pushed back to camp as quick as we could. We stepped over. We counted 8 scorpions that we stepped over, a handful of frogs, and one wall seep that looked just like a pair of cougar eyes. So it was quite the trip. And definitely by the end of it, we're feeling kind of tired. It was one of those where like you knew how many miles you're supposed to be going, so you keep checking your watch, and then you get to the mile that you think you're supposed to be at camp, and you're not there, and pull out the map, and you're like, oh yeah, I've still got another mile. And man, at that point in the day, you're about coming up on like 16 hours into the day, and you're just done. It's dark. You're running with a headlamp on at this point. And anyway, so we pushed back to camp, got there at about 9. Searching high and low for Eric, but no, he's just over in the bushes sleeping. He just threw his pad right down on the dirt, and he was sleeping with the scorpions. I woke him up. I'm like, dude, what's going on? And I don't think he even said anything to me for like 5 minutes. I'm like, are you alive? Are you okay? But Joe pokes his head out of the tent too. He drifted off. I'm like, man, you guys are really staying up worried sick about us, aren't you? Jeez. So, so we get our tents pitched. We're hammering in stakes into concrete dirt next to a tent that's probably 10 feet away from another campsite, because they just have you stacked in there, but there's just nothing else we could do. So we made a little bit of ruckus, pitched our tents, I think we were starting in on dinner, and Darren showed up. He's probably 25 minutes or so behind us, and he kind of did the same. And then at that point, those two were like, all right, we're going to bed. And I was like, where's Tyler and Brigham? I thought they'd be closer. And so I was like, well, I better stay up and make sure they're all right. And so I went from 9 to 10, and then 10:30, and then 11. And in fact, at one point, and I'll have to go back and see if I ever even did message Tyler on the Garmin, but I was sitting on top of a picnic table waiting, and I tried to send a message to Tyler, and I kept like falling asleep while I was trying to write the message and having to rewrite it because it wasn't making any sense. And then I luckily caught myself falling off of the picnic table as I fell asleep, and then I just was like, all right, I just got to stand up. But I was just so exhausted. All of us were just so exhausted. So then I kind of stood around there, and eventually I saw 2 little red lights coming into camp. And I was a little worried about you guys. So how did your last 8 miles from where I split off from you go?
They went very slow and painfully. But the moonlight was nice. Tyler and I talked about that. It was nice to hike by the moonlight. It's like a little romantic, painful date with Tyler.
Yep, I talked his ear off. We chose not to use headlights because of the romantic lighting, and because when you had your headlamp on, you attracted bugs, which attracted bats, and there was just tons of bats. And so, yeah, we got like really good night eyes. We could see really well by the time we were rolling into camp. So I think it's worth Darren mentioning what his motivation was for getting back to camp, because that still blew my mind.
Well, just to even finish the trail, I mean, yeah. I mean, you at one point it was like you had to find a deeper level inside. And that's something I think is just really interesting in this whole story is we were pushing the limits, right? This was going to be all of our longest days on trail. It's going to be all of our most elevation ever gained on trail. And, subsequently, it became quite painful for a lot of us in different ways, right? So I felt like on the way up, it was like, you're kind of staring this in the face of like, I don't know, I felt like you found another gear at one point. And I asked you about that, and you told us what your motivation was. So what was that?
Well, there's two motivations. One was the dinner for when I was done, but more importantly is I told my wife and kids I was going to do this, and I was not going to stop. I'd had this trip planned for a long time, and I've been wanting to do it for a long time. So quitting was never an option for me, and so I just kind of had to keep saying to myself, like, gotta finish. It's like the stupid little engine that could. It's not stupid, but that's how that's how I felt. I felt like the stupid engine that couldn't get up there. So I just had to keep on going, and it was awesome to finally get to the top. But the way down, yeah, that was a lot easier on the way down for me. But yeah, so the second motivation was my dinner, and I had packed a steak for 30 some odd miles for that day, and my motivation was just to get back to camp and cook this not so frozen steak. I froze it the night before, but by the time we got done, it was room temperature. And so I was like, do I want to test this? And
I would have placed money that you were about to get sick that night. Yeah. I was waiting for it.
So the borderline there was like, I'm just gonna eat half, and if I don't feel sick by the end of that, then I'll keep going. And I'm not sick, so I put enough seasoning on there at least to help. It was a little bit sketch. I didn't cook the potatoes like I was hoping. I was just too tired. But those are my two motivations: just telling my family I could do it, and then getting back to eat my dinner. So
I think what you told me that was probably a little bit more realistic was, I don't think I could look Danny in the face if I didn't do this.
So Danny's my wife, and she would never let me hear the end of it if I didn't finish it. So
it was a very strong motivation for him, because he hung tight. I mean, at times, he was lagging behind and we were waiting for him a little bit, but by the top of the mountain, he was at our same pace, and I was really impressed with that. But, yeah, anything else on day one that we missed?
I don't think so.
Just a lot of miles.
Yeah, a lot of miles.
We all set our PRs, and we all crashed, and we all agreed also to sleep in the morning. But I don't know, Darren, tell me how that went.
Okay. So here the sun comes up earlier than anywhere else in the world. I swear. Like, what time was it? 4:30?
It was like 4:45 when I was starting to see light through the tent.
Yeah, and when the sun's shining on me, I can't sleep. So,
Cobra Kai up here, Eric, whose trail name is Cobra Kai now from wearing a bandana, he would have gladly lent you that bandana to cover your eyes. You can always just keep your eyes closed when you sleep.
Very much so.
And you could have kept sleeping. A couple hours. It would have been great for all of us. So we were up, I don't know, you guys were moving around at like 6 a.m. at least.
It was earlier than that. It was more like 5:30.
Yeah.
Brigham, Darren, and I were up.
I was a little bitter. I wanted to sleep a lot longer than I got.
Because I didn't go to sleep until midnight. Me and Brigham got in real late, and then all of a sudden, it's like super bright at 5:30 in the morning, and I was not happy about it, but I couldn't go back to sleep either. And it was really hot night.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, so then we got up and basically looked like a herd of grumpy old men as we lumbered around the campground using the restroom and getting some water. And in fact, I believe someone overheard people calling us that.
there was a camp. The people in the campsite next to us were all like in their 60s or 70s, and they had like a guide that was cooking them this big polenta, cheese and bacon dinner and all this stuff, or breakfast. And I saw Eric, Derek, and Tayson walk by them, and they just start laughing. And they're like, those guys are walking worse than we are. And me and Brigham couldn't help but just start laughing at that, because we were all looking pretty rough.
It was definitely rough. A lot of our calves were just kind of like locked up and crazy sore, and me and Brigham's knees were really sore, and I mean everyone just had their own aches and pains. But yeah, got up, had our breakfast, and Joe snuck off at some point before we were all ready. Wanted to get a head start because he'd taken a spill the day before. I was a little worried about getting up and out, making sure his knee was fine, but also just wanted to get a head start, thinking we were fresh, but that was far from the truth. So
I had been told this was a fastpacking trip, and I was only hiking. I was getting footage, so I was stopping, every like couple hundred feet to get a new cool view of the Grand Canyon and trying to capture that for our YouTube videos. And so, yeah, I figured I would be going at a snail's pace compared to you guys. And so I went on ahead. How late after I left did you guys actually get started?
Probably 45 minutes or an hour.
Okay, so Derek would have passed me.
Yeah.
Because Derek was only like 20 minutes behind me by the time I had finished the trail. Way to go.
The thing about today was Derek's rule for fast packing is you do not run uphill, like at all. But then when you're on flat ground, you can jog or run. And then when you're on the downhill, you sprint.
as fast as you possibly
and it just so happened that all 10 miles of today was like uphill, if not very steep uphill. So we definitely weren't catching you.
No. So let's say, Derek, I guess you were first to meet me. How did your hike go? Tell us about it.
Well, for the first little while, I was hanging out with this part of the group. I think Darren and Brigham and I left earlier. Brigham and Darren, I think, were still dealing with legs and knee pain and whatnot, and left before Tayson and Tyler and Eric were ready to go. And I was just ready, so I just decided to leave with them as well because I had everything packed up. So we hiked together for a while until those other guys caught up with us. And we get to this point where they have these bathrooms, these toilets that are spread out every I don't know, however many miles, just throughout the canyon along the trail. And we passed one, but it was closed because the ranger was cleaning it, and they take quite a while to clean them sometimes. So we kept hiking past there, but I kind of realized a while after that, I kind of want to use a toilet. And so I decided I was gonna hike faster and just get out of there and get to the next place as soon as I could. So I kind of took off. I wasn't never running, but for me, one thing I've noticed is like I actually feel like it's easier for me to hike at a faster pace sometimes. It wears less on my muscles. I think it has something to do with maybe the acid that builds up on the long, slow movements. And I was feeling some of that going at some of the paces that we were at this morning, earlier in the morning. And so when I started moving faster, I realized, hey, like this isn't so bad. Like I feel pretty good now that I'm moving. And so I kind of just kept going at that pace throughout the rest of the day. And I thought it was beautiful. Honestly, this is my first time that I've been to the south rim of the Grand Canyon. So on day one, that run down into the canyon from the South Kaibab trailhead was just blowing my mind. And then today, as we were running out, I was just loving that Angel, or what's it called? The Bright Angel trail. There was like just tons of desert oasis type environments, one after the other, with these springs and these little, I don't know, streams, different things of water that are popping up out of the rocks and out of the canyon. And I just thought that was beautiful, hiking up. And yeah, I think I ended up getting to the very top of the South Rim here like 20 minutes after Joe did. I never saw him, but I finished about 1:30 in the afternoon, and it was good. I did stop quite a few times for little mini breaks in the shade. The switchbacks were just, those are pretty. Yeah, you think you're getting done, and again, the same thing happened to me. I'm like, I could see the rim of, like, the top of what I thought were the cliffs of, like, the South Rim. But then I get a little bit higher and see there's another row of cliffs that are taller than those, just a little bit further back, and that kept happening. I'm like, oh, well, I'm not near as close to the top as I thought. And, yeah. As we get higher up, the South Rim is like really touristy. So for anyone that's not been there before, there's all kinds of people that visit the Grand Canyon, specifically at that Bright Angel trailhead. There's plenty of people coming down and hiking just a couple miles before going back up. So the higher I got, the more people I ran into, and a lot of them were pretty friendly. And I actually enjoyed chatting with them on the way up. That actually kept me going when I was really tired. So we're getting. Oh yeah. So Tayson reminded me. I just there was a bunch of people taking pictures as I rounded a corner around one of the switchbacks, and I look at what they're taking pictures of and pointing at, and there's a ram just hanging out right by the trail, and so I go right up over to it and snap a couple pictures, and he did not care one bit that I was there. He was just chomping on a bush, eating leaves, and doing whatever he wanted. And so I took a selfie with him. He's about 5 feet away from me, and so that was kind of cool. But as I kept going up, talking to people is kind of what kept me entertained or distracted from how tired I was, because at this point I was getting close to 50 miles almost from the 2 days that we've been hiking, or a day and a half that we've been hiking or running. So just chatting with people along the way actually distracted me pretty well and was kind of nice. But then I got to the top, found Joe, and felt really satisfied, and glad that I didn't have to hike anymore today. So
I think Tyler and Darren were next. I do gotta add one thing
before those guys go. I think it's official now that we're going to have to rename Derek's trail name to Banyo, because I think every single bathroom we pass, he's going to go in it and attempt to do some business, just so that he doesn't have to do it outside. I don't know. I think I'm seeing a pattern between Highline, Skyline. Now this one, you find every single bathroom and you visit it, and I'm sure you're not using it every time. I think you're just like, I've got to try it. It's here. So I think your new trail name is Banyo, man.
Hey, man, it's way more convenient. Way more convenient if you can use the bathroom someone's built.
Yeah, you go first.
I don't even know where we left off.
Just your day today.
Yeah.
Today. What happened today?
Yeah, so for me, I mean, yeah, I took off with Brigham and Derek all around the same time, and we just kind of hiked out of there. Like Derek had kind of mentioned, yeah, like my legs weren't cramping up today, but they were still really tender, and I didn't want to risk it, so I was just taking it as a regular hike, not really pushing myself on the way up. And yeah, we kind of all stuck together for a while, and I don't know, at one point I kind of got separated. I don't know if they took a break or whatnot, but I just kind of kept going up. Was kind of ahead of them just for a little while, and Derek caught up to me, and Derek's a freaking mule. He can get up the mountain so fast. And I said, just go past me, man. Like, there's no keeping up with you. And then not too long after that, Tyler ended up catching up with me too. And then we kind of hiked out together from that point. He probably felt bad for me, seeing me limping up the mountain. But he had a second date.
Romantic stroll out of the Grand Canyon.
Yeah, and that hot. It said 62 degrees. I don't agree with that. Like, it felt like it was 80 degrees all the way up. The sun was hitting the sand, reflecting back on us, and I felt like I was melting all day long. So whenever there was shade, I would take advantage of it. I was just trying to stay right in the middle of the pack, and I was happy with that. And yeah, like Derek said, just talking to the random people. You know, they're coming from all different walks of life, and they have some interesting stories. We saw a family that had, 3 kids? And they were really nice people. I mean, the youngest kid probably seemed like 7 years old, and they had quite the trip planned out. This was just the start of it. They were going to go to Zion, hike the Narrows. They're going to go over to Yosemite. Anywhere else?
Yeah, they were going to do Bryce Canyon and a few others, all in one big family trip.
Yeah.
It sounded awesome.
They were all in good spirits, and made me look bad. I was dead, and these guys having these, 3 younger kids, they were getting after it.
Yeah, that's cool.
But yeah, we ended up getting up to the top, maybe 25 minutes after Derek is what they were telling us. So it was an accomplishment. It felt really good to get done with this hike. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think the day was pretty good for me. I definitely had sore legs this morning, and kind of like Derek, I felt like if I could get a little bit faster of a pace, I'd be able to loosen up and shake some of the soreness out of them. So I kind of broke away from Tayson and Brigham and Eric and started trying to hunt down Darren and Derek, and that was good. I think that did help a little bit, but by the time I found Darren, I was like, okay, I don't need to set a record going up this, because it's hot and I was running low on food, and yeah, I just knew that if we burned all the way up to the top, we'd still have to just sit around in the sun, wait for Tayson to get here with the car keys. So we just started talking to people and making jokes and watching desert bighorns climb up the cliffs, and it was a good time. It was hard. That's a dang steep climb up out of there, and it does feel like it isn't going to end, but it was a good day.
Day 2. Let's see. Sorry, I'm trying to not doze off over here. Not because the subject is boring, but because I'm tired. Yeah, stepped off with Derek and Darren, who of course were just being nice to walk at my snail's pace. And yeah, I don't know. I'd say my knee just progressively probably just got worse throughout the day. I think by the time I was done, it was max pain. So yeah, nothing really got better with the miles or anything. But yeah, it was beautiful. It was a nice morning. Yeah, well, we stopped at Indian Garden for a little break. It was 80 degrees, and I don't know, what time was that? 9:30 or 10?
It was early in the day.
It was,
probably.
yeah. So, definitely took some serious effort to get up to the top with that knee issue, but yeah, it's cool to get it done, and I think
What happened with the bird?
Oh, yeah, yes. So there I was, just miserable and just putting myself through pain. And we were like maybe a half a mile from the top, and there was like an overhanging tree by that overhung the trail. And right when I walked under it, a big giant crow decided to leave the tree and poop on my head and my arm and my leg. I don't even know how that's possible. It hit all those 3 places with poop, but I got drive-by'd by a crow. So, but I was wearing my hood over my hat, so I think that was pretty good protection. Yeah, it was a good day.
Yeah, when the day can't get any worse, well, never say that, because it always can. You can get pooped on by a bird at any moment. Yeah, so I tucked in with Eric and Brigham at the back here, and quite enjoyed it. I had some knee pain starting out, and it kind of dissipated, but anytime I started to pick up the pace, it would come back just a little bit, and anytime there was like any downhill, which was almost never, it would come back immediately. But so I was happy to give these guys company, and anytime that I had any kind of like, oh man, this climb's going on, I would just look at Brigham or Eric and be like, I'm good. I'm in good shape. It was great because Brigham, we always talk about this, is like he rarely ever leads the pack, but he'll tuck into like the second position and you can't shake him. Like you could like run up a mountainside and I feel like you can't shake him out of that spot. He just follows at whatever pace you set, he's there. So I knew he was hurting pretty bad because he was slowing down a little bit, and I think me and Eric just enjoyed that aspect of it. So, yeah, I'll let Eric talk for a minute, but I also want to hear how much he enjoyed the squirrels, climbing on his shoulders and stuff.
Yeah, so that's probably one of the biggest things about this whole trip is the squirrels are just vicious. So, I mean,
fangs.
I'm just hanging out in the back, trying to keep up with my minimal amount of training and whatnot. Probably one of the hardest hikes I've ever done. But I think it was Indian Garden where they're just literally inches away from my elbow and I didn't even know it. And they're just trying to like eat the food that I've got in my hand, and we're swatting them away, and trying to fend them off with the trekking poles, and they're just totally vicious. But other than that, made it to the top eventually, and time to go get a burrito. So that's about it.
What on a scale of like 1 to 10, let's say on your expectation of how difficult this would be, what was like the result back, I guess? Just time in the canyon versus your expectation of how hard it ended up being for you.
Oh boy. Scale of 1 to 10, how much harder than what I thought it was?
No, just not a scale.
Okay, it was definitely a lot harder than I expected it to be. I mean, the downhill, it was what it was, and I kind of expected all that, but I kind of thought that I'd be able to hang on a little bit longer with everybody on day 1, and then the trail just seems to never end on day 2, so it just was a lot harder than I expected, but goes to show just how much I looked into it beforehand, so should have done my research, but no, it ended up being all right, and it was a good time. I'm glad I went. But
did you push any limits? So you had to dig deep or anything to get out of there?
I think so, yeah. Just, mentally trying to, just keep on going, but, yeah.
All right, well, this podcast has been going on for a little while. Does anybody have any final thoughts? Any final stories before I end this thing?
I mean, I think your questions were good. I think we could always break it into 2 podcasts if we have to.
Yeah.
But, you asked a question when I cut you off.
Oh, yeah. Highest high and lowest low. Real quick off the top of your head.
Highest high was the first half of day one. Like I said, I really get along with running down hills quite a lot. So I actually was having a blast as we were just running down the South Kaibab Trail the first 8 to 10 miles. And that was definitely my high, seeing the Grand Canyon from the South Rim view for the first time. Lowest low was probably, probably getting to the North Rim and realizing how dead I felt and that I still needed to hike another 15 to 17 miles back to camp. That was probably the low for me.
All right. For me, I think the highest high was just hitting the top of the South Rim at sunrise. We were wanting to be hitting it earlier than sunrise, but I was glad that we hit it when we did because the views were amazing. And it was just so cool and exciting to be coming in, seeing it like that, and be feeling fresh and just be cruising down there. So I think that was probably the high. I was just really excited about the trip. And then the lowest low, I think, was probably like the last couple miles of the first day, where Brigham and I are just kind of stumbling through the canyon in the dark, thinking that camp is going to be just around the corner, every corner, and it not being there. And then when I finally got into camp, that was kind of when like I don't know if it's mental or if it's just a reaction of like stopping and letting my guard down, but that was when I started to feel a little sick and overexerted and just completely spent. And so that took a minute for me to like even be able to move. Like I just laid down on the picnic table when we got in and had to do some breathing exercises and just give myself a second before I could even set up my tent. So that was the low.
My highest high was same as Tyler's, just getting started on that South Rim. There was some amazing views over there. Just being able to see, I'd never seen the Grand Canyon before, so for me it was all new, and it was just awesome to see. Lowest low, you can probably guess, was just when I started cramping. It's like, when Tayson comes and says, "Hey, how you doing?" and he has that question in his mouth, like just like, "You gonna be able to finish? Because we don't really want to wait." It's like,
I'll work on being more tactful.
It's
we
like,
don't want to just kill you.
So no, it's like it's always done the nicest way. It's like, but I never wanted to be that guy, and so that was the lowest low. I was like, I hope I can finish. It's like it was hard, and so yeah, it sucked, but I was able to do it, and so I was happy about that. But that was the low point. When I had to consider for myself, like, should I really do this? Am I going to do more damage? Against better judgment, I still went, but that was the lowest low.
All right, well, for the sake of not repeating everybody's highest high, my highest high was the finishing the South Rim today and being done. Because it's a great hike. I love coming down here. But definitely lowest low was the first night, crutching myself down the trail for 14 miles in the dark. Well, no, like 8 miles in the dark. Knowing that Tyler was fully capable of going much faster and was having to stick back with me for an extra probably 3 hours of hiking that he didn't need to do. So that definitely was painful and not enjoyable. Who's up?
Let Eric go next.
Well, I guess the biggest high for me was when we're running down and I'm thinking to myself, man, I can hang with these guys. This is going to go great. And then the low part was getting to Cottonwood Campground and already recognizing that I can't hang. So that was when I, decided to tap out and turn around, because I knew that, if I kept on going, that it would be another 20 miles, and I just didn't have it in me to keep on going. But
did you say the highest high?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, run it down. Yeah, apparently this trip sucked. Everyone was happy at the beginning, and to get it over with is what I got out of all of these answers. No, I obviously the run down was really beautiful. It was really awesome, but I'd say the highest high for me was probably just getting to the North Rim. Getting 23 miles in and just being like, man, we just did it. It was a long climb where, like, the more tired you got, the more steep it got, and the more it seemed like it was going on forever. And I just went in circles, it felt like. But getting to the top was a pretty big high for me. But I don't know. I'm a big goals guy, so probably the runner-up, if not the biggest one, would just be to be like, hey, we set a new PR, I guess, in terms of, like, the amount of miles and elevation that we did on trail. And I thought that was pretty cool, and I definitely enjoyed that. But lowest of low, I already mentioned, was the 5 miles down from the North Rim. That was just super painful for me. If that's the level of pain Brigham was in the whole time, I feel very, very bad for him, because it was really, really painful. Got to the point where I was stepping off of the ledges sideways instead of, like, going forward down the trail. I was turning my body sideways just to make a step down, and that wasn't fun. So not a good one. But I want to interject one question here, Joe, before I let you ask another question. We used to do this question a lot. It's been a long time, but your favorite piece of gear and a piece of gear you wish you would have left behind. So I'll go, and there's no repeats. I'm not going to allow repeats on this one. So I'm going to take the low-hanging fruit here because I got the mic, and I'm going to go with my favorite piece of gear was my Comperdale trekking poles. Those things were 110% a necessity for that hike. They saved me from falling painfully down at one point, and definitely saved me from falling off the ledge, I feel like. So those were probably my favorite piece of gear. Gear that I didn't need. Apparently Eric was fine sleeping in the dirt, so I didn't need to haul a 2-person tent all day long. So I didn't need that. Could have gone with the 1-person tent.
Okay. The piece that I probably liked the most was the TopQuilt. I've never used one before, and I thought it worked great. So that was pretty cool to be able to experience that. And then negative piece. What would I have not brought?
Anything you didn't use at all, or just was dead weight in your pack?
I don't even remember what was in my pack.
I didn't pack your bag or anything for you.
So, yeah, I just used the stuff that Jason said I didn't bring, so.
All right.
Yeah.
That's pretty good if you don't have anything you would have left behind. So.
Yeah, I think all of it was pretty good, so if I think of it between now and the end, maybe I'll interject. But
my favorite piece was the trekking pole tent. I'd never tried it before, and it was amazing to see how much less my pack weighed, how much space it saved, and it really wasn't too hard to set up. I mean, Taysom might not think I set it up very well, but for me, it worked. So that was my favorite piece. What I wouldn't have brought, I brought too much food. I brought too much food. And so I probably could have just slimmed down on what I brought. I was just too tired to eat those potatoes, so I could have eaten it, but...
Yeah, I just need to interject here that I brought 4,500 calories for day one, and I could have eaten another 1,000 or 2,000 is what I felt like. So that was something I wish I would have brought for sure. It was even more food, but... So knowing you had extra food this whole time, come on, man.
Yeah, you should have just told me. I would have given some. So...
All right, for me, I think my favorite thing I brought was the squirrel's nut butter. I got zero chafing on that 48 or 49 mile trip, which is awesome to come out unscathed like that. And
Which you could buy from the membership.
ooh, yeah, plug for the Live Ultralight membership. You join that and you can get your hands on it. Let's see what I didn't use. I packed a little tripod that I did not use because we were going so dang fast everywhere. We didn't have time to do a group photo or like a time lapse or anything like that. So probably could have left that home. Oh, wait.
Man, this is tough if I don't want to do a duplicate, but I might do a duplicate anyway. My favorite is, I don't know. I think the tent. It was really nice weather. It wasn't like I needed a shelter from any kind of weather, but psychologically, I've been through the ringer with those tents, and so there's like a psychological effect of getting in there and having like immediate feeling of like respite or relaxation and security. Like I can finally now rest. So that was really became a factor last night when I was just so tired and sore. The one thing I didn't use was my Ventus hoodie, so that was in my pack. I packed it, but man, it was so warm. It was really warm this morning. I hiked basically till I went to bed, so I didn't need any kind of insulation on that hike. So that's probably one thing I didn't need to have with me.
So, my favorite piece of gear, that was the question, right? The favorite and the least favorite, something to leave behind, right? Favorite piece of gear was probably the hydro flasks that we have with the Fastpacks that we've been testing out. Being able to drink out of those super easily throughout the trip was awesome. I probably also would have left behind a bunch of extra food, bars specifically. I had a lot of different kinds of bars, and I just, by the end of the day, on day 2, I just couldn't eat anymore, even if there was any need for hunger or like fuel or whatever, just to have more energy. Like I just couldn't bring myself to eat any more of those, and so I definitely should have left some of them behind.
I guess I'll go. I did less miles, but I still have opinions. The thing that I should change out are my shoes. I got some like cheap Walmart junky shoes that I thought would be fine for the trip, and the tread on them basically like halfway through going down the south rim, like they were gone, and I slipped and hit my knee really hard, and I blame it on the shoes. So that's something I wouldn't take. I wish I had more of the Gatorade or Powerade Zero packets that I bought. I prefer those over the... we were testing out some retail products, and as far as like electrolyte mixes are concerned, I still think Powerade or Gatorade Zero. It was Gatorade Zero. I still think that one's the winner for me. So... and favorite piece of gear, I really like the Dominion tent. I'm the only one still using it, but as far as like a tent is concerned, I really like our Dominion tent. I like the vestibule area thing, which I'm now spoiled by, and yeah. I want to do one last question here. And if you can make your answers quick, that'd be better. But we're going to go around. And would you ever do something like this again? Are you planning on doing something like this again? So many miles, so much running, fast packing in particular, not just hiking. Does fast packing still interest you after this trip?
Fast packing definitely still interests me after this trip. I don't need to do the Grand Canyon again this year, but maybe another year. It was a good trip. It was beautiful, but I mean, once this May, it's good enough for me.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool to find your limits and just see how far you really can go and kind of push those limits and test it. And so I think Fastpacking helps me do that. When we just plan big backpacking trips, it helps me do that. And so I think I still have interest in all of it. I probably would have interest in coming back and trying this route again with a little bit of different training or different setup or something to compare and learn. But I think it was good. I don't think I need to do 40-mile days every time I go out. That's for sure.
Yeah, I am the same. I really enjoy fastpacking. One thing that's really nice is it teaches you that you have to be ultralight if you want to fastpack. You can't fit everything in there if you want to bring all the luxury items. And so, but yeah, definitely.
Says the guy who brought a steak.
Okay. That was one steak in tin foil, okay.
The trail name is Haystack, for Pete's sake, because you bring cans and all this stuff and make Hawaiian haystacks on the trail.
I haven't brought cans in a while. So, I do like a good meal at the end of a day like that.
Now you've just got to use our dehydrator, or our freeze dryer from Harvest Strike, because you could make whatever you want on the trail, homemade. You'd love it, dude.
Cook me a rehydrated steak and make it taste good,
You
and
could
I will
make
do it.
Hawaiian
And I will do
haystacks.
it.
You could make a great Hawaiian haystack in that thing.
So, back to the question. Yes, I would do Grand Canyon again, but like Derek, probably not within the next few months. I'd like to do a little bit more training before I went and attempted that again. But yeah, I enjoy it all. I like going long distances in shorter amount of times. So yeah, it was great.
I would say I still have interest in fastpacking. I feel like I'm still kind of learning or feeling it through and learning what I like about it and what works and how to have the best experience and what kind of experience I want with fastpacking. So I think my judgment there will probably continue to evolve. One of the things I'm learning is that I don't think fastpacking needs to be a test your limits activity, and I think there's possible further enjoyment that could be had there. But in terms of doing something like this again, like right now, I don't want to do something like this again because I'm tired and is hurt, but I'm sure I will, and I think it's good to do something like this every once in a while, and yeah.
We'll have you go first, Eric.
All right. Well, fastpacking, this is my first trip, but I'm definitely interested in picking up a pack of some kind and giving it another go and continuing to do that. So I thought it was really cool. So
Going back to the Grand Canyon.
Going back to the Grand Canyon, definitely coming back. So it was too cool not to. Plus, my wife wants to do this trail, so I don't know when we're coming back, but maybe next spring. Based on the weather, that's kind of been my decision. It's like, all right, if we come back, we got to be in better shape. And we're going to do it in like March or April or something like that. So, better weather.
Sweet. For me, interest in fast packing, yes. Kind of like Brigham said, I think it's still adapting a little bit for me. I think it would have been an awesome fast packing trip as is if we just had maybe slowed down a little bit on the downhills and stuff. But I think the trails that you choose make a little bit of a difference depending on the speed. You know what I mean? Elevation is like the great equalizer. So this one just had so much elevation that it makes it difficult to fast pack and really be be able to cover that many more miles that much faster. But I do love kind of the small package size and quick and usefulness of the Fastpack. So that's something I really do like about it. And then as far as coming back to the Grand Canyon, yes, I thought the scenery, like it just exceeded my expectations in about every way. It was just way prettier than I thought, and it was just way more grand than I thought it was going to be. Having spent a lot of time like everywhere around the Grand Canyon, but not necessarily in the national parks of the Grand Canyon. So that really exceeded my expectation. But I will interject this as well, that I have signed up for this ultra marathon in July that's going to be even farther than this, and basically double the elevation that we did on day one. And I don't even know how to approach that right now in my mind. So that's where my thought is on all of this, is like, I don't even know if it's going to be a reality for me to execute on that one. But I love fastpacking as well, though, just because it does push me. I learned a lot about, I feel like, electrolytes and hydration, stuff I'm sure I'll share on future episodes. I drank 12 liters of water. That was another PR of mine, as I drank more water and fluids yesterday than ever. And it's a great teacher, and I do also enjoy that aspect of it.
Cool. Well, thank you guys for listening to this episode of the Live Ultralight Podcast. Make sure to subscribe wherever you're listening to it, and leave a comment or iTunes review, and we'll read it out on the show if we think it'll give value to our audience. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We should be doing a big old video where you can actually see all this happening in action in real time. Thank you guys for listening. We'll see you next time.